Welcome to our Lunchtime Live program on WJEJ. This is Will Kaufman from the Public Information Office of Washington County Public Schools. We're here the third Thursday at this time to talk about public education here in the county and beyond in many cases. It is a pleasure to welcome back sort of a bittersweet meeting again with Dr. Justin Hartings, who has been a member of our elected Board of Education for 2 terms, coming to the end of that second term and then not running for re-election. Justin, welcome.
Thank you, Will. Nice to be here.
It's a pleasure to have you. I have my own personal grief to levy on you, only because it's been a pleasure to watch and listen and understand how you do what you do on the board. I think, just personal opinion, that folks have gotten a lot of bang for the buck out of the homework you do and the insights you provide. But you had this set up as a, so to speak, as a 2-term affair. If you got the 2 terms, you were going to be done at the end of 2 terms. Is that the way I understood it?
I didn't think of it that way when I first ran, mostly because when you first run, you're excited about the opportunities that are ahead of you. You want to make a difference, and you don't know how long you might want to serve, really, because you don't know what the job entails. What the public sees is just such a small part of what board members do, whether it's the committee meetings we have, whether it's the binders and binders, the 3-inch binders that come home that you really have to read through if you're going to do the job, at least the way I want to do it. It's the phone calls from constituents, it's emails, it's just keeping up on general education that takes a whole lot of time. And, after 1 term, I felt like I finally had figured out how to do the job well, because it takes a while to figure out how to do the job, because there's so much that you need to learn, how to be effective, how to work with your colleagues, that I just didn't feel like my work was finished. But after 2 terms, I feel like I've contributed what I can, and while it's bittersweet to walk away, I think it's time to give somebody else the opportunity to lead.
Are the reasons that you had on the checklist when you first ran the same reasons that does the checklist match up from those 8 years ago to what it is today, for instance? The reasons why you have done what you've done in elected office?
There wasn't really a checklist. It was again, you sort of go into it thinking that the job entails certain things, and just as I think with any elective office, you run into what reality is, which is you're presented with challenges that you didn't think you'd be presented with. I didn't think I'd be presented with having to hire a new superintendent. I didn't think I'd be presented with 2 or 3 rounds of redistricting. I didn't think I'd be presented with a complete change of curriculum from the voluntary state curriculum to the Common Core to so what I thought the job wasn't necessarily always what it in fact was, but I feel good about having learned the things that I need to know, hopefully, to try to be effective.
What challenges are left over as we speak? What do you feel like at the end of your second term, at the end of this term, in these couple of months, that you'll leave with a relatively, you'll be able to sleep at night knowing, okay, these are the things that maybe I left on the table, but the board that will be elected and ready to go will be able to clean those up. I mean, what's left on your agenda?
Well, I think any time you leave public office, there are going to be things left on the table, because there are always new demands on public institutions, and that's as it should be. I feel good about a number of the things that we did as I look back, which I've really started to do over the last month or two, over the things that we've done in the last 8 years. Whether it's when I first ran for the board, Barbara Ingram was still under construction. We really hadn't thought through the whole small learning community idea, which I think has really started to take hold in this county. It's what parents expect now. It's what students expect. all of that was still ongoing. We had a superintendent who was superintendent of the year and then moved on to other things. So that was, of course, another huge challenge. We had a number of schools that needed to be replaced. All of that was a big challenge for all of us. But as I look forward, my goodness, what an exciting time for public education. I mean, and I can think of no better place to be involved in public education than Washington County, because we've really decided to try to be leaders in the state, if not the county, and I think or if not the country. And I think as you look at the recognitions that we've received from the state, the recognitions Dr. Wilcox has received, we really are looked to as leaders, and that comes in a number of ways. It's in our construction of facilities. We cut the ribbon yesterday on the new Jonathan Hager Elementary School. The state representative was here, and she couldn't say enough about the creative ideas we put into the building, the collaboration rooms that are going to allow teachers to sort of configure their classrooms in new ways. One of the things she said to me was, there are counties all over the state that have talked about doing this. You're the first ones to actually do it. I can't wait to see how it turns out. Whether it's dealing with a post-Labor Day start, or perhaps most significantly, the technology plan that we've developed here. This is the first year it's been implemented. I see my children at home with their iPad on the table as they're doing homework. That's incredibly exciting to me as we think about what the possibilities are that our really great teaching and instructional staff can do with this new resource. We're the only county in the state that's so far moved to a one-to-one program for technology. And when you think about the wealth that exists in some of the other counties, the fact that our kids are getting this opportunity before kids in Montgomery County and Baltimore County, that's a really exciting time. Now, it's going to bring some challenges, which is what makes it hard to walk away, is how are we going to address those challenges? But boy, it's a really exciting time, I think, in Washington County.
Is there any downside to being a leader, whether in one area or 3 or 5 or name it, where the responsibility is too much for us to handle? To me, it hasn't been. Do you get any pushback in any way at your level that we don't want to be out in front on this? Is there anything to that?
Yeah, I think there are clearly people in the community and perhaps some board members too who don't want to be the leaders and the innovators. There's the saying, right? You can be the leading edge, and often that's the bleeding edge. Right. Because look, you're going to face some challenges, and everything's not going to be completely smooth when you try to be creative and do things in new ways. But I think what we're seeing in the school system is really just one small part of what this broader county is dealing with, which is, what kind of county do we want to be? I mean, do we want to be a county that looks at the way things were 20 years ago and says, you know what, this was a great place to live. We want to be the way we've been for 20, 30, and 50 years, and the way it was when I grew up. That's what we want to be, because that's what's going to make us happy as a group of people. Or do we want to be a county that says, you know what, there's some really great creative opportunities out there. We've got great natural resources. We got great people in this community. And let's try to do some things differently and creatively, while still not losing the things that have made this community great over a number of years. And I think that tension really is going on frankly at all levels of government.
I think it's easy to identify you in one of those two groups. Have you felt the need? How have you pitched that side of it? In moving ahead and being innovative, or have you felt the need to sell your position on that at all, or do your decisions simply reflect that, and you don't step out more than you have?
I think the decisions do reflect that, but I think the way that I've tried to describe one of the things that probably sometimes to my colleagues' frustration is that I've always tried to explain why I vote the way I vote. Mm-hmm. I don't have to do that, but I think that helps to frame the conversation. And I hope that in those explanations, I've tried to push people to think about things in new ways. And I'll just give you a few examples. When kids listen to music today, unlike when I listened to music as a child, I mean, if I wanted to get a song, I either had to go to the record store and buy the album, or I could sit listening to the radio on my boombox and have a tape in the tape player and listen to 8 or 9, 10 songs that maybe I didn't like in hopes that one might come on and then I could hit record, right? A kid today can grow up to be 15, 20 years old and never once listen to a song they don't like, right? Because they can go on to all the streaming apps that they can use to listen to music. They don't like a song, you skip it. That's a whole different way of looking at something simple like listening to music. Another example, if you want to go somewhere, you either when I was a child, you had to call and get directions or buy a map, right, and try to navigate. Nobody thinks of doing that anymore. So what I've tried to communicate to my colleagues and to the leaders of the school system and to the public is these changes in the way we do things, we take them for granted because we do them absolutely every day, whether it's in music or, as I described, with our maps. With schools, though, there seems to be a certain nostalgia that people have for the way that schools were when they were students, or at least in their fantasy the way they were when they were students, right? That, I remember graphing on this graph paper and using my colored pencils, and that's all great. But if kids are going to operate in the world where they never listen to a song that they don't like and where they don't have to look at a map because they can get to where they go without it, education, I think, has to be framed a little differently. And that's the perspective that I've tried to bring.
Dr. Justin Hartings is my guest on Lunchtime Live today, Vice President of the Board of Education, and will be ending up 2 terms with the upcoming election and the swearing in of new board members later on in this calendar year. Do you find that something like the iPads can actually break maybe the generational, that kids will be able to, in one way or another, sort of sell their parents and the community in broader terms on the fact that, listen, mom and dad, you're from a different era. I got an iPad. Here's what we're doing in school. That it may help break, and this is, and I don't mean disrespect to the organization and the cause where this phrase originated, but to break the cycle of exactly what you were saying.
And I think that's exactly where we are right now, and it's why this year in particular I think is so exciting for the public schools, because we're going to find out over the next year whether the kids and the teachers who are guiding them can help us as a community do that. I mean, I thinking back to the days when I'd carry home a backpack that had 4 or 5 textbooks on it, each of which was 400 or 500 pages long. The kids don't need to do that anymore. And where the kids are relative to the information, it's only an iPad away. I've been a working scientist for 20 some years now, and I haven't used a sheet of graph paper probably since grade school. If our kids are learning science by doing graphs on graph paper, they're not learning science the way they're going to be expected to use it when they get in the real world. I haven't turned in a sheet of paper with my handwritten anything on it in as long as I can remember. Right. So if a student is turning in a essay or an English paper to a teacher and it's handwritten, there's value in writing by hand. I get that.
Right.
But they're not going to do that when they're out in the workforce and they're working for a boss. I mean, we need to be teaching kids the way that they're going to be expected to operate when they're in the real world, if you will. And this year, I think, is a real opportunity for kids and the teachers who are guiding them to really show what we can do. And that's why it's so exciting.
Have you whiffed on anything in your 8 years? When you look back, boy, I missed that one. or those ones?
Yeah, I'm not sure I would say I've whiffed on anything.
Right. Maybe a little strong, but something that maybe you misjudged in the early going, changed your opinion, whether dramatically or not, but changed a position on something. When you look back,
I think some of this technology, I was late to the party, to be honest, which may be strange to hear me say.
It really is.
Because I was one of those nostalgic people that, I learned to do my math this way, and
Right.
I learned to write this way, and I was skeptical about technology being sort of a gimmick, and I think some school systems sort of used it as that, going back, I think to times when, one class would have Palm Pilots, or,
Right.
There was the TV craze years ago, right? We're going to do instruction by television.
Right.
And I was skeptical of all that. And I think I was definitely probably late to the party with technology. But I think some of that was seeing my own kids in the way they embrace technology. I think it was Dr. Wilcox, frankly, articulating a vision for what the technology could be. I think another area where it's I don't know that we whiffed, but where it's challenging to get it right is in redistricting.
Mm-hmm.
The staff does the best they can to get the numbers right and to project where things are going to be built. And when I first came on the board in 2008, we were just opening 3 brand new schools. We were in the middle of a housing boom,
Right.
and things completely changed. So did we miss some things then? I think we probably did.
It's funny because I don't think the staff is just crunching numbers either. I think the staff truly, at least on that topic, truly is looking at the human element. I mean, that's a no-win in some respects. You have to take your best shot at maybe blowing up a neighborhood here and there, relatively speaking. It's an incredibly inexact science.
That's
redistricting.
About the hardest thing that we have to do as a board. It's about the most unpleasant thing we do as a board, because you're affecting people's lives and their
Right.
daycare and how they live, and it's not pleasant. But when people say we expect our public officials to be good stewards of taxpayer money, that's how school systems are good stewards of taxpayer money. It's by making effective use of the resources that we have. And to the broader point that you make, and this is one of the things that I really leave the job with a profound appreciation of, is when you're on the outside watching the board or watching the school system, you don't appreciate just how much commitment, care, and frankly love the staff have for the jobs that they do. And we don't always get it right, whether it's the board or members of the staff. I mean, you miss sometimes, or you maybe don't do things that turn out as you would have planned. But I've never seen anybody in my 8 years not succeed because they weren't trying their absolute best. We don't get it wrong because we don't try absolutely as hard as we can. And that's what I wish the public could see. Because on social media and some of the vehicles out there, it's easy to just type these one-liners and sort of trash board members and members of the press. But and I would say this about all 7 of us. We all try to do the absolute best we can for kids. And I think it's true of all the staff members too. They have absolute commitment and determination to try to do what's absolutely best for kids in this community. And that doesn't mean they always get it right, but it's not because they have ill motives.
How much has the experience of your kids in schools and in classrooms and in interaction with staff members, how much has that influenced your board work?
It influences it a lot. Not because my child says, "Hey, Dad, you should do this."
Yeah,
you should change
no,
this
I
policy,"
understand that.
But because as a parent, you see every day how they interact with their schools. I see them bring home the iPads, and Dr. Wilcox, I'm sure, will tell you this. There have been times when he's said, this is what we're doing at schools, and I say it's not what my kids are doing, and that's, I think, good feedback for him. But seeing how the things that we do impact them and their friends, because their friends over and they all want to tell me, or I go to a cross-country meet and their friends' parents want to talk to me. That influences me a lot. It's none of the board members is in school every day, and the kids are, and that their experience certainly gives me a lot of insight into what really is going on.
A couple of topics of current note, just current business. School calendar has been quite the, well, I'll put it in terms of a debate. There's plenty of discussion, let's say. Are you a post-Labor Day, not a post-Labor Day person?
I'm a local flexibility guy. I think local school systems should make those kinds of decisions. In the Eastern Shore, they don't have a lot of snow days. You go to Garrett County, it's not uncommon they'll have 20 snow days. So maybe it makes sense for Garrett County's calendar to look different than, say, Wicomico counties or some other Eastern Shore counties. So I'm a local decision maker guy. I think the more time we can spread out breaks and have kids work and then have time off, work, have time off, I think that works best. I see that working best for my kids. But we're going to have a challenge to meet this year in order to do things a little differently.
How about the downtown project, which has had legs, has had the legs cut out, is back and seems to be back in a big way over recent weeks and months? Right.
That's one of my biggest frustrations, that we couldn't get that project wrapped up before I will be off of the board. So we put a lot of effort into the original conception of that over the last couple of years. I think it's a great idea. I think it's a transformative project for downtown. I think we can once again be innovators and show the state what can be done if different agencies will work together. I mean, how often do you get a city, a private theater, a university system, the public school system, the county, all working together on a single project to try to improve its downtown? It's hard to get two different government entities to agree on anything, let alone on something of this magnitude. So, but that's difficult for some people because it's being innovative, it's sharing space, and it's yet one more place where I think we can be examples to the state of what you can do when you think a little bit differently.
Is the momentum so strong on that now that there aren't, other than detail work, is there any potential hitch in this?
Well, certainly funding's always a question.
Right.
I think we've identified our funding as a public school system, but that's $4 million in funding out of a $30 million project. So, an election could certainly change the way people approach this question. It could set us off in a different direction. I'm not sure if it will all be finished by the time the county commissioners have an election. So I would certainly not say it's locked in stone yet, but I think things are all pointing in the right direction, and all the partners really seem to be working together.
Before we go, your highlights. Give me your highlights. Give me your best pieces of satisfaction in your 2 terms on the board.
The moments of satisfaction I see are not votes or not things that probably the public sees. I went through all private schools, K through graduate school. So I wasn't familiar with the public schools, didn't really know much about it, and sort of frankly came from some of those communities who don't have many good things to say about public schools. But when I go to an event like the ribbon cutting the other day and see some children who face real challenges in their lives and see their faces light up when they walk into the library, or when I go to a graduation and meet a student, which I did last spring, who came from a rough background, who's now going on a full scholarship to a top 25 ranked university. You realize that public schools really do make a difference in the lives of people who might not otherwise have many opportunities. Those are the moments that are satisfying to me. And again, they're not moments that people see. It wasn't a vote or any of that. I mean, there's some things I'm proud of.
Right.
The small learning communities we've developed, the Barbara Ingram School, those are all, I'll remember those well, and those will have a lasting impact. But the greater impact is those kids who, if not for the public schools, where would they end up? And we don't make a difference for every kid, but we make a difference for an awful lot of them.
Well, it's been a pleasure to watch, listen, and understand, because you've given us your best shot, and you let us know what you're thinking, and that's been incredibly helpful. I think to your colleagues on the board, I think to the staff, I think to the community too. I think folks can use that. That's the way to go. If you're going to be in this position, then let us know what's on your mind, and you've done that, and it's been exciting in some cases. It's been,
I know, frustrating.
It's been entertaining in some cases.
Yeah,
yes. Yeah. It's all of those things wrapped up. And since you still have a connection to the school system, I'm assuming we'll probably see you now and again. I hope so.
You will.
Dr. Justin Hartings, it's a pleasure, Justin. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Will.
Our guest on Lunchtime Live. We're here the third Thursday of the month at this time, a partnership between Washington County Public Schools and WJEJ.